The state of Australian politics is embarrassing at the best of times, but after the Victorian Liberal Party pre-selection that saw Moira Deeming ousted, it takes things to a whole new level. So let's talk about it. I watched a video from Punter's Politics recently, and whilst we would disagree on a lot politically, he made a fantastic observation. The calibre of our politicians is declining. But I think the conversation stops one layer short of the more interesting question, which is not who these people are, but what kind of system keeps producing them. The Moira Deeming situation gives you a very specific kind of exhaustion that comes from watching something completely predictable play out. Deeming had already been through the whole ordeal, the suspension after attending the Let Women Speak rally, the accusations of Nazi association, the defamation case she brought against John Prosciutto, which she won, and the court ordered him to pay $2.3 million in costs. And despite all that, despite Tony Abbott, Peter Credlin, and even opposition leader Jess Wilson backing her pre-selection, she still lost the ticket to Dinesh Gurushetty, a man the party's moderate wing apparently preferred. Almost immediately, Gurushetty had to step aside after it emerged he had provided a character reference for a now convicted child sex offender. And it's worth noting he also has a history of branch stacking and shady business dealings. Political economist Anthony Downs argued decades ago that democratic systems do not necessarily reward competence or good outcomes, they reward survival. They reward the capacity to navigate internal structures, maintain the right alliances, and remain viable within the specific ecosystem of politics. Instead of, say, farmers discussing feeding the nation, we get lawyers and unionists cunningly trying to tip the scales in their favour. There is no incentive for genuinely talented people who have built something and have real options to get into politics. Why would you when you're faced with factional warfare, consistent reputational exposure, and a career that can be easily dismantled with a single internal vote? Nearly 40% of all parliamentarians were political staffers before entering office. 5 out of our last 6 prime ministers came from staffer backgrounds: Albanese, Morrison, Abbott, Rudd, and Gillard. These are people who moved from student politics through party rooms and into the highest office in the country without ever inhabiting the real world the rest of us live in. Our political class is a closed-loop system where they recruit from their own interns, and the only life experience those recruits have is advising for and spinning for and sucking up to the politicians who came before them. This is what adverse selection looks like in practice. You end up with someone like Albo, a career politician who has spent virtually his entire adult life inside the Labor machine. He's now lecturing us about carpooling whilst flying around the country in a taxpayer-funded private jet. The hypocrisy is almost poetic, but more than hypocrisy, it illustrates the kind of person these systems reliably produce. Someone who governs not with the country's best interests at heart, but with ideological commitments and their personal survival in politics driving every decision. The mistake is thinking those in government have access to some higher wisdom than the rest of us do. Yet those in government at their most generous are deeply shaped by a system that rewards self-preservation above everything else, and at their worst are Machiavellian operators who will do and say whatever is necessary to remain exactly where they are. And until that changes, watch this country decline even further.